Good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up will be Citizens Forum. We're just gathering the last sheets, so Dana will call names for Citizens Forum that are scheduled to speak. You can stay where you are because the mics will pick up wherever you are. Please state your name and your address, and you have a 2-minute time limit. Oh my God, you guys are all waiting for me.
Okay, I have Brad Mertens, Amy Magnan, and Nora Leisner.
Brad?
Yep, right here.
Go ahead.
Brad Mertens, 391 Tomery Trail, Sabisky, Wisconsin, 54171. The inequity of power was made crystal clear last board meeting when our superintendent delivered a speech that exceeded 2 minutes. Why are parents, community members, and teachers limited to 2 minutes? We are interrupted by the board president, buzzed by a timer, and the meeting is then transitioned to an unrelated agenda item. We come to address issues that are important to us, but are limited to unreasonable time constraints to get our point across. We do it because we have no other choice and then see no follow through when addressing issues. Whereas our superintendent was able to plan her speech with no time limit and delivered it without anyone interrupting or dismissing what she had to say. This shows that we are different. Those in power within the district are regarded differently as superiors to community members. District Policy 167.3 indicates the board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing citizens of the district to express themselves on district matters. If this is the policy the board has put in place, why does the board not allow Pulaski at least the time, public comments during sessions compared to neighboring districts? For example, Green Bay, O'Connell Falls, Ocano, Ashwaubenon, and Andapier all allow 5 minutes. Howard, Swamico, Shawano, 3 minutes. Pulaski allows a maximum of 2 minutes for each citizen to voice their concerns. If this isn't sending a strong enough message to the public that you don't want to hear what we have to say, then what is the reasoning for the limited time? If we want different outcomes, we must act differently. The superintendent said during her speech that the community needs to support each other. Well, this is what it looks like. This is a Pulaski community, including parents, teachers, community members, all coming together, working for change. If you hear us and want us to work together, then show us. Until then, your words continue to be meaningless and devoid of any action.
Thank you. Amy?
My name is Amy Magnan. I live at 68 Allen Road. I am a parent of children in the district, and until recently, I was a 4th grade teacher at Sunnyside Elementary. I resigned due to the unprofessional and punitive behaviors I encountered while working at Sunnyside. I am here tonight in support of these amazing parents and teachers in this district. I know they are here in part to support me, and I certainly do appreciate that. But more importantly, they are here because they support teachers who care about and care for their children. They are here because they want their teachers respected, valued, and supported, and they understand that retaining qualified, experienced, and caring teachers positively impacts the community as a whole. Individuals at the administrative level wanted to punish me for speaking truthfully and acting in the best interest of my students. Despite their efforts, I refused to be controlled or silenced, even though it cost me my job. Actions that were taken against me were punitive and lacked any regard for due process or adherence to protocol. The administration at Sunnyside and others in positions of power have perfected the art of manipulation, bullying tactics, and disrespect when they encounter opposing viewpoints. They become controlling and act unprofessionally by using threats and intimidation to scare teachers into compliance. I am not alone in enduring this type of behavior, and I will not be the last staff member to leave the Pulaski Community School District as a result. Teachers need to be respected and allowed to voice their concerns without fear of retaliation. A district that is top-down depletes the value and empowerment of its teachers. The school board and those in positions of leadership cannot make all the decisions and then blame the teachers when the outcomes are not successful. We are not scapegoats, and we deserve better. It is apparent that the superintendent and some members of the school board want to move on, but moving on and moving forward are inherently different. Positive resolution can only come when voices are heard and action is taken. Thank you.
Nora Leisner.
Yep, Nora Leisner, 131 White Clover Court. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Board of Education this evening. In the Pulaski Community School District Parent-Student Handbook, there's a section that is focused on bullying. For this handbook, bullying is defined as a person willingly and repeatedly exercising power and control over another with hostile and malicious intent. Bullying can be physical, verbal, electronically transmitted, psychological, even through acts on the property of another or combination of these. All complaints about aggressive behavior that may be in violation of this policy shall be promptly investigated. If the investigation finds the aggressive behavior has occurred, it will result in prompt and appropriate discipline, co-curricular sanctions, and/or disciplinary actions up to and including suspension and/or expulsion. With such a detailed plan in place, can an explanation be provided to parents of students that are indeed being bullied within their facilities? What steps are you planning on taking to addressing these issues and holding the administration accountable? We have asked our school's administration the same question, getting the same answers. We have a policy or procedure that is being handled, and it is being handled. Then why do we have repeated and ongoing bullying problems and poor student conduct if these are in place? Are the administrators not following the policy and procedures like they say they are? Who holds them accountable, whether if they are being followed or not? If we're not following the policies and procedures, then it appears they may not be effective given the rate of increased issues. Safety is a focus of our school districts, but there are instances where our children are allowed to mistreat teachers and other students with no consequences. Where are the parents left to turn? As parents, educators, and concerned citizens, we share a collective responsibility to ensure that our schools are safe. Bullying is not a problem, it is a barrier to learning and personal growth. Thank you.
I have Ann Wetstein, Darlene Sikorsky, and Kylie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, Ann Wetstein, 6416 Kelly Joe Drive, Abrams, Wisconsin. Okay, thanks for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. While I'm not focusing on any one area of the district, there appears to be an ongoing issue with the retention factor. A review of personnel reports dating back to August of roughly 2021 shows the following resignations: Fairview 3, Glenbrook 6, Hillcrest 7, Lanois 7, and Sunnyside 11. While there are no details provided that explain the resignations, I believe it's critical to start asking the question why, figuring out common themes, what's going on, and how can we have some action plans. As a business owner and leader, I find it rather disappointing that it appears we discuss the number as a percentage and lose the human aspect. While I know it is obvious that any teacher leaving is extremely disruptive, are we truly understanding the impact on our children or of the overall district? With this kind of turnover, we lose consistency, structure, and a feeling of comfort for our children and our parents. As a parent, we often hear times that we are listening, there's a plan, there's something that's going to happen, but we'd like to hear what that plan is. Pulaski Community School District is intended to be focused on a community effort to educate our children and provide a place that teachers can thrive in. The numbers I shared would indicate that teachers are not thriving in our district. Measures need to be taken to identify the cause and provide a long-term solution. I have heard on multiple occasions that our teachers are solely here for the students, which makes me very, very sad. It means that they aren't supported or valued by our admin. Failing to address the retention issue with our teachers will impact class sizes, quality of education, and the long-term desire for other teachers to be here. I came back to this district for my kids to be in this district because it's where I was. And I hope that all the teachers that I hugged and said hi to today are still here for them when they get there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Darlene.
I'm Darlene Sikorsky, 6412 County S. Sobieski. I'm a Pulaski community member who has had 2 children go through Sunnyside and Pulaski High School. I was on the PTA board for 8 years and worked with them for 13 years at Sunnyside. We were always welcomed and appreciated, and they couldn't wait for us
parents to come into the school. It was an amazing school and district back then. Parents, teachers, school board worked together for the good of the students. I now see teachers leaving Sunnyside in astonishing numbers. These are excellent teachers that we are losing to neighboring school districts. This is not acceptable, and this issue needs to be addressed now for the betterment of the students. Superintendent Space, I received the Rater report where your article was published on the front page. And I quote, "Practicing what we preach, we are a school district that is always learning, open to new ideas, and willing to put in the work that leads to success." This is not what I see happening. Teachers, parents, and the community are not being heard or listened to. No action items come out of meetings, and the issue appears to be swept under the rug. I further quote, "It truly takes a community to come together to have a school district as phenomenal as this one. The community is comprised of everyone who resides in the Pulaski School District. It is not the superintendent and the school board alone. It is by a communal effort by all that the goals are achieved. We need change now." To Amy Magnan, I cannot capture my appreciation for your passion for teaching and nurturing young minds is truly inspiring. And we are grateful for all that you have done for our students here at Sunnyside. Thank you for not only for the academic education, but for being an excellent role model and instilling important values in our children that will guide them throughout their life. Your enthusiasm for teaching and genuine care for the students has made a world of difference.
Darlene,
You are
your 2
the
minutes
true
is up,
unsung
so if you
hero.
could just wrap up your comments. we
God
would
bless you
appreciate
in
that.
your new journey.
Thank you.
Kylie. Kylie Bodwin, 6232 Brown Road. I am here tonight to express my concerns regarding the staff turnover rate, specifically at Sunnyside. For those who don't know me, I am the PTO secretary at Sunnyside. I have a passion for supporting our teachers in this district, and I am saddened at the loss of great teachers at our school. I know it was reported at the February 7th board meeting that Pulaski has a turnover rate of 11%, but I feel it is important to note that if we break this down and look closer to just Sunnyside, this rate is much higher. I have a handout that I'd like to give the board for public record. If you comb through the personnel reports from February 2021 to today, Sunnyside has lost 15 teachers. If you calculate the turnover rate with approximately 28 teachers at Sunnyside, that means that there was a 54% turnover rate at Sunnyside over the past 3 years. 54%. Now, I don't like to use these numbers for this because teachers are people. They're caring, talented, helpful, educated individuals who care for our children when they're not with their parents. But the district wants data, and this is the data. I would encourage the board members to reach out to some of these individuals to see why they left. The parents of Sunnyside do not want any more loss of incredible talent. We want change. I'll leave you with this. If a teacher's job is dependent on a student's test score, then why is an admin's job not dependent on teacher retention?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kylie, you can give whatever document you have to Dana, and she'll make sure she logs that for you.
I got it.
Ashley Winker, Sheila Seidel, and Jennifer Van Schloot, and then last we have Heather Legal.
Ashley Winker, 6507 Elizabeth Lane. I have yet to witness our superintendent or the leaders at Sunnyside take any responsibility or accountability for some of the things that are occurring, and this is a disappointment for the teachers, parents, and families. As parents, we continually teach our children that they need to accept responsibility for their actions and that they need to right their wrongs. But if we don't see that from our leaders or our superintendent, how can we expect it from our children? At the last board meeting, our superintendent said she, along with all the leaders of the district, are teachers first, that she comes from a long line of teachers and it is embedded in her heart. But where is the acknowledgement and apology of the wrongs that have taken place? Wrongs such as ignoring concerns. acting like everything is fine, rudely interrupting people when they speak. Coming from a long line of teachers, wouldn't one know that this is terrible behavior? Where is the apology for making a community of citizens wait 3.5 hours for a board meeting to start, just to be able to speak? Where is the accountability? I have yet to see it, and we have yet to hear it. This also applies to Sunnyside leadership. Where is the apology for kids losing a teacher? How can you blame teachers for poor test scores when you don't support them? Someone stated that being silenced is a choice, and if you choose not to speak up, that's on you. But imagine that you are a teacher and you are in a situation where your livelihood is solely based on your income or your job, or you carry the insurance for your family. Being silenced is not a choice at all. It's an intimidation tactic used to keep people in line. It is a misuse of power, and it is wrong. We will continue to advocate for our children and teachers until change occurs. We will continue to show up until you prove to us that you are listening.
Thank you.
Sheila Seidel, 602 Crossroad, Sabisky. At the last board meeting, I shared my experience with Sunnyside and the resignation of my son's 4th grade teacher. At that time, I asked the board to work with administration to find where the communication broke down that led to her resigning. I asked the board to work with current and past teachers to get a consensus on what needs to change. Our Sunnyside teachers need to be better supported with their decisions and classroom support. I'm asking the board to not drop this topic and to continue to investigate their needs. The community is watching, our kids are watching, and we need change now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Jennifer Van Lieshout, 7340 Peterson Road, Sabisky. Good evening. Last meeting, our superintendent gave a speech about how admin would wrap around our 4th grade students at Sunnyside, and there would be communication to parents. She stated that she supports every one of our district employees and that she is open to conversations. However, the response to the situation that happened to 4th grade Sunnyside shows us otherwise. We are a group of concerned parents who are standing up for not only a wonderful teacher who was wrong, but for our children who deserve better from this administration, both at our school and the overall district. I'd like the board to know that there was zero communication from Sunnyside admin to parents until several parents reached out about what was happening. We had to reach out several times to both get information about what the plan was for the new teachers first day, as well as for information as to who was in the classroom with our kids. Our kids had no idea what they were walking into the Monday after our teacher left. Several of those kids got on the bus crying, feeling very unsure and anxious. Several of the parents asked our students if admin or counselors were present the first week, and they told us the only person in the room with them and their new teacher was a substitute whom they didn't know very well. You ask us to work with you. You ask us to trust the situation is being handled, but it wasn't. We are continuously disappointed and concerned for our kids. We are not looking for words. We are looking for actions. So show us you are listening. We want change.
Thank you.
Heather.
I'm Heather Legal, live at 1567 Cross Road in Sabisky. Pulaski Community School District's vision statement is one community, everyone succeeds as they learn, grow, serve, and inspire the world. Learn, grow, serve, and inspire, 4 little words that carry so much meaning. So how do we strive to reach the vision statement of the district? I believe the only way we can learn, grow, and inspire is to serve and to do it sacrificially. To serve sacrificially means to place the need of another above our own, even when it's costly, inconvenient, or challenging. In doing so, we leave a lasting impression that is not easily forgotten. You may ask, how do we do this in a community? There's a well-known parable that talks about a shepherd leaving his flock to go after the one that was lost. The rest of his flock was sustained by its community, so the shepherd decided to chase after the one. Even though he might have been in some way at fault for losing the one, he didn't stop to worry about the consequences of leaving the rest of his flock. He chased after the one he needed to rescue. If we each choose to operate under these terms of serving, helping, or being the hero to another, who would you chase after tonight to make things right? Would you be one to celebrate the fact that the shepherd saved one of his flock? Or would you be one to say that he should not be a shepherd any longer? I personally would much rather live in a community that passes on the characteristic of servanthood and celebrating the good that it does. My plea is that we strive to set the right example in what our vision statement indicates we strive to be. One community, everyone succeeds as they learn, grow, serve, and inspire the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the first agenda item, which is overnight and out-of-country field trips. The first one on the list is the PHS Student Council to Middleton.
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about it.
I'm sorry. We do have a motion on the
Thank you
table.
everyone for speaking. I really appreciate it. I think the whole board does. Thank you.
We do have a motion on the table. Is there a second? And then we can open it up for discussion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the field trip to Middleton as presented. Now, any discussion or question, Matt, please tell us about this field trip.
Our advisor, Ms. Wampler, couldn't be here this evening, but this is the annual trip. It's a leadership conference for our student council members, and they get to go there and receive leadership training and interact with other student council students and leaders from around the state and participate in some competitions and activities. And this is an annual event that the board has supported for numerous years. I do know there's usually a question about fees, so I came prepared with that. That $75 fee is to cover in part the registration fee per student. The student council does pay for the hotel registration and the remainder of the fee per student. And then any students that would have any kind of financial hardship with that, they're able to assist.
Okay. Any questions for Matt?
Yeah, on the sheet it says not sure for who has the medical training for this field trip. Do you know specifically who that is now?
That is a great question. I will have to double check with Ms. Wampler as to which, or make sure that the advisor going along has the training.
Okay.
They do.
Can they have it on there before it's sent to us or signed, maybe?
Understood. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It says it won't take place unless there's one person there.
Yeah, it's generally required, right? They may not have the training certification yet, but they will have it by the time
Yes.
a field trip occurs.
We'll ensure that.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. The PHS Spanish to Peru trip. Jeff, I think I saw you here.
Yes, Jeff Ullman. So yeah, we're requesting your approval for a trip to Peru in June of '25. It would be available to all PHS Spanish students who are interested. It's usually, I think it's about a 10-day trip. Students, there'd be a homestay portion where kids would stay with Peruvian families, and we would go to class for about 5, 6, 7 of those days, and there would be various excursions, Machu Picchu especially, and just a really great opportunity for our students to practice their Spanish and see the world.
And this is similar to the Costa Rica trip
Very.
you just took?
Very, yes.
How are the families vetted?
So we go through a company called Interact Travel. We've been doing trips with Interact for, it's been over 25 years, and so they actually have relationships with families down there, and so these people take care of our student travelers for a living. That's what they do. They probably have somebody in their homes right now, and so they're known by the people of Interact. We've actually gone to Peru in 2017 with Pulaski kids, and so I would imagine that the majority of those families we would still see again, because that's just what a lot of the families there that we have established do for a living. So
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Jeff?
For this one, it was the same thing, for not sure who has the medical.
Bernadette, for sure. She won't let me leave for the summer, and yeah, she's all over that. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I told Jeff I would volunteer to be that.
Any other questions for Jeff? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the field trip to Peru as presented. Any other discussion or question? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Have fun planning. Mark, moving on to the initial 24-25 draft budget.
Yeah, so this is really the second month of an 8-month budget process that's going to end in October after the annual meeting. So again, anything you're seeing at this point in time is all based on multiple assumptions, right? None of these numbers are fact. Why I put it down on paper for the first time here in March is the board's going to start making decisions that will solidify numbers on here. So it's a lot's going to change between now and October, but this is down to provide best information for the board. So just rooting it in that. I spoke a little bit on the budget in February. Not too much has changed. So we're in the second year of a state budget, so we know what our revenue limit increase is. It's $325 per pupil. So I have that factor in there. A couple of things that were included in last year's budget. We increased capital expenditure levy for last year. We would be bringing that back down. Open enrollment is in 2 categories here. Again, open enrollment, all we have is applicants right now. That number fluctuates a lot, whether people go through or new applicants come in. So, we have an increase we have a positive increase right now, so about $284,000 more in revenue. But if you go down a couple lines there, you'll see the expenses go up as well. That's due to numbers increasing and the amounts change at the state level. We've talked about ESSER funding for the last 3 years. This is the last year of federal ESSER funds. Again, ESSER funds is COVID-related federal money that's been used. You can see mostly for staffing this last year. So that money is going away, no longer being available to the district. The one item that is for approval, while you're seeing numbers, is the staffing plan. Part of those, I'll let them speak to it, but it is accounted for in the numbers you see here. I have a couple initial scenarios as far as salaries. We know CPI index is 4.12. I've seen probably 15 districts have settled for next year in shared information. A lot are at that 4.12. You'll see a few higher. You'll see a few lower. Most are in that 3 to 5 range if they've settled. Again, a lot of districts have not. Again, this year as part of our compensation plan, we had stipends for all staff members that would be going away in this to make range for, on that line, scenario 2, 3. I just provided the board, if 4 is not possible or not approved by the board, a scenario at 3 and then 2.5%. And again, for the prior years, that's been across the board for all staff has been the model. That's the assumption there. 4K is just our payment. They receive a portion of that $325 for the 4K students at the house. Athletic budget, I have a placeholder in there I mentioned at a prior meeting about, I think it was virtual, about Booster Club wanting to focus more on boosting athletics, so they would remove they currently cover our item for huddle and any equipment that they provide that is needed, regular district equipment, would be coming out of the districts. And non-referendum debt levy, that is, we have debt that fell off this current year for this building addition. That was a 10-year debt, so that no longer has to be taken out. One item that is earmarked, so I have it kind of below the line there, is a potential increase in non-referendum debt levy. I've spoken to it before. We are short on a payment coming due in March of 2025 for Field of Dreams. So I'm meeting with the Field of Dreams committee so that we can put together recommendations and just an update, and that will be at the April meeting. But I wanted to make sure that that amount is accounted for on here at this point. When all is said and done, I have, the district has a beginning fund balance of $10.3 million. I show in those scenarios, if you're running a deficit in the first scenario, just on operational, where we kind of net out. Again, fund balance, we have a policy of 15% or more. again, you'll see that we're at 18 or 19% on those scenarios. So again, general assumptions at this time, some of these things are solidified by the state and out of our control. The last one would be, none of this is known until September, pupil count. And then October is really your tax levy impact, where you see property values and state aid. So September and October are really those big times of determining those two factors. That's all I have on the 24-25 budget at this time.
Any questions from her?
And it's not for approval at this, before June 30th there'll be one approval.
So that amount, that it's $435, right? $435,000
Yeah.
is the field of dreams. Is that paying it off? What do we owe on that?
So right now it's 1.2 million is what the fundraising is short. So again, there's two bond issuance that go back to 2016 and 2018. 2016 would be fully paid by donations. The 2018 bond issuance, the district has been paying insurance, has been paying the interest on it. There are about 5 years of payments that account to about 1.2 million that right now when we project out we do not have funds for.
What was our initial plan?
The initial plan was interest being paid by the district and principal being paid all by donations. Again, out of the funding needed out of those donations, the district had 300 donors and came short 1.2. At the end of the day, the plan, anytime the district takes up debt, it takes up debt, right? So whether the plan was not to fund any of it or fund it all, the debt is in the district's name. So if I'm jumping ahead to any recommendations, if the district's not interested in paying that debt at this time, and I can't recommend that we would default on debt, right? Your option would be trying to restart a capital campaign and refinancing that debt, increasing the interest and expanding it out. But I think when you see in April that we speak to, the district now owns was a $5 million facility. Now I'm sure if you did the cost of it, it's probably an $8-9 million facility. If you look at the ability to have to pick up 1.2 million for the usage and the fact that it is the district's, I think the recommendation would be to find a way to make off the payments.
Can you tell me what financing cost is costing the district right now per year, approximately?
You mean referendum specific? Or sorry, referendum, not
Or
referendum,
the-
you mean?
Yeah,
Field of
Field
Dreams.
right, Field of Dreams specifically.
Sure. So this year, so in 24-25, the district made a $527,000 payment in debt. Of that, only about 30 grand was interest related on phase 2. The rest, $500,000 was paid out of donations.
So about 30K in interest.
Correct, yeah. So next year we have a debt payment due of $543,000. So about $90,000 remains in donations received. There's also a timing factor where donations are still coming in for pledges, so timing that out as well.
And just going backwards to when this was all happening, we were knowing that we were obviously hoping that all pledges and donations would come through, but not knowing for sure if they would. The board knowing that eventually it would fall upon us. The other thing that we need to remember is what these facilities have done for our students and our student athletes. I mean, what our community did to come together to create that, and then what's available for our students right now is unbelievable. So I think we also need to take that into consideration too.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to understand the numbers. I'm not questioning the spending of the money at all. And then the other question I had, so change in open enrollment out, an increase of $215,000. Obviously some of that is probably due to the revenue increase, right?
Yeah.
but that's a lot.
So open enrollment, usually it's a matter of timing, so there's two big shifts. Who's your senior class going out, and there's two, who's your pre-K coming in, and who's going from 4K to 5K because they become a full count, as opposed to a 0.6. But right now, all we have is out of applicants. Nina, do you remember we just went over it? Was it 60 and 44 of the new?
Like, that sounds about right, like.
Yeah, we'll have to pull out of the system, but 60 new applicants. And again, those aren't guaranteed. Some people file every year and don't go out. You don't know. So at this point, it's just an estimate. But 60 and 44 is pretty even.
Yeah, and 45 coming in and 66 going out.
Thank you.
And we're only a month into the window. Yeah, that
Until
goes to
the
the end of April.
So this is a change in open enrollment, so it looks like on this, an increase of $215,000 going out. Is that not the case then?
It is. So just the same of, we're actually, if we have 66 new, we have a huge senior class going out, like 39. So it's not it's a positive. Next year will be a positive because we have 39 out and only 12 in. So we're dropping a class where those tax dollars are going out of district. Yeah, so the net change is negative for new, but it will be positive in total at this point.
Any other questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark. The next thing on the agenda is the initial 24-25 staffing plan.
So you have a memo that puts together our staffing plan for our K-12 buildings. And so kind of the process that we go through is we look at our current enrollment, we roll it over. We look at this point, intra-district transfers that have came in already for kindergarten to get them properly placed within the buildings. Obviously, course enrollment at the high school and the middle school play a key role in determining what theirs looks like as well, especially with students taking the different courses and what they need to staff in each of their departments, especially with their specials or their electives as well. And so that brings us to each of the areas. So elementary, one of the things that we don't have a solid grasp on obviously is 4K because enrollment opens and then placement of those students start in May. Same thing with kindergarten. We try to get a good grasp on that. That's probably closer, obviously, than 4K. And so, like I said, I already went through and did intra-district transfers for kindergarten students that were requesting, so that we could get them in the right buildings to have the right numbers. And so, you do have that up above in the spreadsheet that's in box, or that it's linked in the memo as well, of what our current enrollment is and then what projected enrollment is as well. One thing that I would add is that we're in the first window of intra-district transfer, so that ends March 15th. And then we enter into a second window, and that goes up through May. We always place our intra-district students before we place open enrolled students into the district. So we want to take care of the students that live within the district and make sure that we can try to get them into the request of where they're asking to go. And then we run a last window of intra-district transfers up through about registration date, and then we place those students. So that pretty much goes over the summer months as well. And intra-district really only affects elementary schools. It doesn't affect middle school and high school because we only have one building. So you can't ask to go somewhere else based on daycare, whatever it might be, work schedules. So for elementary, our elementary staffing is staying neutral. 84 K-5 students in 24-25 across the 5 elementary schools. There is, in one of the buildings, there will be a decrease of 1 teacher based on how the enrollment fell with students. But then that displaced teacher does have a position in the district based on an elementary teacher retirement. So nobody ends up without a job. They're guaranteed a job. The only thing that we are asking for, and we've mentioned this along the way the last couple of months, is to add a learning support teacher at Sunnyside, a 1.0. Since 2014, Sunnyside generally has been staffed at 1.5 for an LST. Many times it's been combined with something else, so Megan's aware of that because she served in that 0.5 role with a 0.5 of a different position as well, and Michelle did the same thing as an LST and a dean of students. So, however, right now, and Jennifer had asked this question before, right now we only have one LST at Sunnyside, so we're asking to pick up that, not only that 0.5, but to go up to that 2.0. PCMS, there's, you already approved the student-centered coach at the last meeting as well as for the high school. We are going to monitor the middle school numbers. Right now, they are about the same of what they are currently at. There may be 7 or 8 students less, I think the last time that I looked. However, we anticipate that we'll pick up students, over the summer months. It tends to happen. And so we do want to watch that number closely because we could potentially need to add on a grade level teacher to cover if there is an increase to even out some of those. One of the things that we don't do, Allie or I, we allow the middle school to make that decision of where they're going to place their core teachers. So, for instance, right now they have 30 core teachers between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Pat and Brenda will meet with their guiding coalition team, their leadership team, and really have conversations of student needs and where that might, fall. And so it might not stay 10, 10, 10. They have a really large 6th grade class that's at 300 right now. So they may decide next year that they're going to bump an 11th teacher into 7th grade. But we really make that a building decision on what they decide that they want to do. PHS, we did put this on the memo so that you at least know that there was a request to add a 0.5 PE teacher. However, when we look at class sizes and section numbers, it does meet our contract obligations of up to 12 sections or 6 per semester. So it didn't rise to the top of our priorities. Mark kind of talked about the staffing part of it, so we just kind of left it on there as, we wanted you to know that that was a request, but we weren't moving that up to the top of the priorities. And then I already mentioned student-centered coach. Do you want to talk about student services since you're here?
Sure. Okay, from student services, looking at special education, we always look at not only the number of students on every teacher's caseload, but also their need. There's a weighted calculation that we use for that, and that process has occurred to project what's going to happen with next year's enrollment. And so essentially, we aren't recommending any changes in the number of special education teachers or therapists or anything like that. That would all remain status quo. The one thing that we would like to look at though is we've had a program support teacher in the district at like 0.5 for a long time, prior to me coming, and that position was really allocated to look at compliance and really dig into the IEP compliance and implementation process to make sure that IEPs are being written and then also implemented according to the legal requirements. We have a lot of kids in this district, almost 600 kids with IEPs. And so that's a lot for one person to kind of try to manage. So I'd like to look at increasing to a 0.5, or increasing to 0.5 to make it a 1.0 FTE program support teacher, specifically focused at the elementary school, because the other piece to that is not only IEP compliance, consistency, monitoring, all of that, but also looking at results. So if you were at the keynote, the opening day keynote, or the February 23rd keynote address, they were talking about the differences between students with disabilities and their proficiency versus students without disabilities, and there's a significant difference. And the way that you remedy that essentially is have very strong systematic approaches with interventions and progress monitoring. With that position, like elementary focus, 1.0 FTE, PST, we'd be looking at not only IEP compliance, but also results, looking at interventions and progress monitoring to make sure that students are closing the gaps at accelerated rates. So that would be that elementary piece. And we also want to look at that at the high school level too, to look at and study what we're doing with our special education programs at the high school to see if we can close and continue to close gaps for students with disabilities at accelerated rates. So we did not fill a position this year in special education at the high school. Enrollment changed, we didn't have a need to fulfill a position this year. I know it looks like an ad for next year because we absorbed that position this year, but that would essentially account for that.
So the literacy, so the 0.5 secondary literacy, that wouldn't be absorbed by what you're talking about with the 0.5 program support teacher?
Right.
Would that still
That would have to be an ad. That would be, if it went this model, then that would also be an ad.
So it wouldn't be an ad, it would be so I would say a transfer. It would be status quo of we're still maintaining a 0.5 literacy, but we're adding a 0.5 PST, so that's where you're seeing that 0.5 ad.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you said you're having that person be full-time, but then are you hiring somebody, is that separate from the literacy? Is the 0.5 PST for the high school separate from the 0.5 literacy?
We didn't think we could fill a 0.5 PST or a 0.5 LST separately, but together.
Okay.
And there's people out there that have that type of qualification that would work great in that position potentially.
Do those positions eliminate some of the work for the teachers that are working with the students right now, and what would that look like?
Yeah, so depending on how the positions rolled out, diagnostics could be an area that could be, there could be assistance provided. So for example, educational evaluations, teachers in some schools are doing educational evaluations for students who are referred for special education or have re-evaluations. So that testing might be something that a program support can assist with. And also coaching in that process. If a teacher needs to learn how to administer an assessment or any forms of assessment, they would be able to help guide and instruct and help the teachers with that. Also IEPs, assisting with the IEP development process and making sure that the IEPs are being written and implemented properly. That's a huge part of that. So once that becomes really efficient and effective, with that coaching, it's kind of that coaching model too, then teachers are more effective in that process.
One full-time for the elementary level and then one full-time ultimately. Is it for the high school and middle school, you're saying, for that level?
Just
or
at the high school.
Just at the high school. What do they have at the middle school? I'm sorry. If you
Right. No, we don't want to add a position right now for that purpose. We're having conversations about how we can do internal coaching within without having any staffing changes. Yeah. And then the other is our looking at our English learners. We had an increase in need this year. Several students moved into the district with EL needs, and we'd like to look at. We did not fill the position this year that we as we've evolved and continue to look at our student needs. The position was not added. But we look at next year and we should definitely look at adding a 0.5 to get us back to a 1.0 of our ELs.
So within the summary, you'll see the budget breakdown. Each line item shows the total budget impact for that line item. Part of these funds would come from Fund 27, which is special education, so we are reimbursed for partial amounts within Fund 27. So overall, we had approved at the February meeting $162,000. So we're asking with all of these changes for an additional $21,000 increase to the budget for staffing for a total of $183,000. So with approval, we would start processing postings for getting new hires on board and getting that out prior to spring break, which gives us a little bit of time on local districts.
That increase was contemplated in your budget.
So, full-time LSD at Sunnyside seems simple, right? 500 students in that building, we have one. So, hopefully that's some action that you guys see tonight for Sunnyside. But we have, how are we computing those numbers? We didn't get a chance to talk before the meeting, so let's talk about it. We have 86 students at Fairview and they have 1. We have 500 students at Glenbrook and they have 2, and they're a Title I. We have this Act 20 that I think everybody's sweating about a little bit, and these LSTs, from what I understand, are spending a very small, if any, portion of their time on math. Like, do we need more of these? Where are we at? Like, how are you coming up with these numbers? 1 for 86 in Fairview, 2 for 500 in Sunnyside and Glenbrook. Can you talk through that?
A lot of times it's based on the needs of students, and so, and I think you had mentioned as well, you know, we've got the Title I buildings, but I think something that right now at Fairview, but Hillcrest could easily be in as a Title I school. They'll go 2 years where they meet it, and then the next year the percentage will just fall below the amount. Technically our middle school and our high school, if we had enough funds, which we don't. So I've been in this role for 12 years, and we used to have $350,000, and we used to fund part of a position at the middle school, and we used to have 2.5 here at Glenbrook, and then the one at Fairview. That's been reduced. I think it went back up to $150,000 this year. So when they call and they tell you that, you know, they're cutting that amount, it obviously affects how we're going to staff people. But it does come down to need, and there's been a lot of conversations, like sometimes people will say, well, this building has really high test scores, why do they have a full LST? And then my response always back to them is, well, maybe the work that the LST does, you know, helps to keep those scores where they're at as well. So ultimately it's where test scores are falling and where kids are falling in below the 25th percentile. Well, actually 10 percentile is where it falls for LST for their interventions. I mean, yeah, if we had the funds, if we had a money tree, we definitely would have math interventionists as well, but we don't. It's just, you know, kind of where it is at, and we do with what we have, I guess.
Are they spending any time on math?
Yes, they do.
What percentage would you say?
I would say 15 to 20%. You know, it really depends on, you know, once they get the data and where the students are at. But we will next week actually do some specific work with math interventions. Have a person coming in that teaches a course that some of our teachers, not even a course, it's a certificate, that some of our teachers took advantage of this last year through UW Oshkosh. When they were working, I think some of them are working on their master's, some of them are working on a certificate, so she's going to do some work with them as well. So, you know, middle school probably has one person that's a little bit more designated towards math than literacy out of those 2 positions, but the rest of our people are responsible for both literacy and math.
The coaches help with math too, though, don't they?
They help more with the tier 1 part of it. So they're really helping to fine tune the universal instruction that happens, and where the LSTs are more of that tier 3, and then the classroom teachers are the tier 2. But I'm, you know, definitely something down the road but the only place that we've always thought of where we could get more interventionists is an increase in class size. You know, in order to balance that budget out, that part. Would I say we're comparable with other districts? Yes, matter of fact. My colleagues just sent out again asking, hey, for your K-5s, what are you staffing for interventionists, and for your 6-8 buildings? And we felt, we gave like our number of students and we gave our interventions numbers, and we were right in the ballpark of De Pere, Ashwaubenon, West De Pere was in there, Seymour, Denmark, and Howard Swamico kind of all responded. So
Any other questions with regard to the staffing plan recommendation?
The numbers at the elementary school, sorry to go backwards, but I made a note so I wouldn't forget. For Glenbrook, what class size do we have to stay under for Title I?
So not, title doesn't have any
Doesn't have
restrictions
anything
on
for
class
class size.
sizes, but both Fairview and Glenbrook were what we called SAGE schools originally. And then the school board, Barb probably remembers this, decided that we wouldn't take this, it was starting to not be balanced and worth it to take the funds, because like if you hit 19 students, then you automatically had to split that into 2 sections. And sometimes 19 kids is fine, like, you know, it's not that big of an impact. And so the board kind of made the decision of, let's try to keep those class sizes, but we just won't, it doesn't pay to take that SAGE money at that time. So we went away from it in that building. Then they transitioned to what's called AGR, which Curtis talks about a little bit later in the agenda. That one, when AGR came in, there's actually 3 ways that you can meet the requirement now. Now it doesn't have to be that you stay under 18-1. We still try, I mean, but will I say that there's been a time where we probably were 19? Yes, but then we fell back on the coach part, that you have to have some format of an instructional coach, and then there's a third option as well. But we almost always meet that 18-1 or under.
I just noticed too, class sizes a little larger.
And that's kindergarten through grade 3. So AGR isn't for 4th and 5th grade. So that's why you see larger class sizes.
Yep.
And Title I funds come based on what?
Lots of things. I learned this year that we got reduced, which I didn't even have a clue, because we got reduced because she said our number of foster kids in the district dropped from 17 to 10.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't even know that that was a factor in it. So we always think it's based on free and reduced lunch. That's not the only factor. They're like, I'll even say to him, I'll call Mark and I'll be like, we just got reduced again. And he's like, and then we'll say, explain this to us.
As well.
What?
Regional income. So if the Green Bay area falls within it, you know, from the federal level, they'll look at regions. So the recent cut where all schools in our area got hit, you know, like a 50% decrease, was that there was more state wealth in the area, not even Pulaski specific.
So up north place with not much industry is probably going to get more Title I than
So
Green Bay
it's
area.
based on it's based on not just student population, but adult population as well.
Yeah, it runs on the 10-year census, so she told me that was another thing, that they didn't have that data at that point when they made our preliminaries. Because we got called in June to say that we were being reduced again. I'm like, but you gave us a preliminary number. And she said, oh, this factor and this factor. Like, okay.
AGR funding was based on income as well, so specific to the building. So if you have more free and reduced students in a building, your funding goes up, vice versa.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on the staffing plan?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the staffing plan as presented. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Curtis, moving on to your AGR reporting.
Yeah, kind of a nice segue. So I submitted 3 documents to the board. The first is just the board memo, and in that board memo, it outlines AGR, and it outlines the 3 areas that we can do. We have routinely stayed under that 18-1 or at that 18-1 mark, and in some cases, if you actually went over, you run into, is it really sustainable, because it ends after grade 3, you know what I mean? So then we had that happen one time where we wound up having like 6 sections. We just had a really big class, and it really, you start having to follow, and you start having to have people move between grade levels, and sometimes that can be difficult too. So the district's really been good as far as most of the time we're at 18-1, which we are again this year. Per AGR, I need to meet with you guys twice a year. So the second thing that I submitted to you is what I submit to DPI. I actually was in touch with Mark today. I'm always paranoid about that, just because it's DPI, and so I always keep Mark in the loop on that as well. But we got confirmation from our person in charge of DPI that they received our plan and that we're moving ahead. The third thing that I submitted for you is what's called an AGR School Board Summary, just a little bit easier to read. So it tracks our numbers. even though our goals are all based on typical or aggressive growth, as well as the high-risk students with the aggressive growth, we're pretty competitive, so we always want to know where our college pathway and low-risk students are as well. Having done this last year, it was kind of nice for me this year to be able to kind of look and see like where were we at, like in retrospect to our scores from last year as well. As long as we've been giving winter assessments since I've been at Glenbrook, whether it was back in the day it was MAP testing, I don't know why, but we always seem to dip a little bit in the wintertime before coming up again in the springtime. So it's not that way at every not that way at every school, but it has been. So I know as soon as the test scores came in, Jenny happened to be coming through the building for one of our meetings and said, yep, it kind of happened again as far as the winter test scores. However, we certainly have been talking about if we recognize that, what can we do around it. So we've got some conversations started already to try to make some sort of a celebratory type of an event where we're just really, pumped up to be able to take those winter assessments. So, any questions for me on any of the scores or?
On your performance objective, it talks about having all students demonstrate typical or aggressive growth. And I know in looking at these percentages,
yep.
Some of them are far from all
yep.
students and far from even half of the students.
Yep.
So what kind of plans are in place to try to address all students and growth?
Yep, great question. So our performance objective is the same thing as it's a district objective, that all of our kids are going to make that growth. Just some of the things that we talked about as far as what we're going to do. For example, some things, we have Tier 3 intervention. You've talked a little bit about the LSTs here today. In particular, we had a kind of an anomaly that happened where last year our outgoing kindergarten students, when we ended the year last year, we had 5 students that were high risk in reading. This year, after our fall assessment, we had 17 that were high risk. We followed same protocols, lots of data meetings, lots of data discussion. When winter testing came around and we saw that we were not closing that gap, our LSTs met on the fly with our grade level teachers, which was a testament again to how well they collaborate and work together and shape stuff around. We've now got 9 of those 17 that are receiving what's called Tier 3 intervention with our LSTs, which basically doubles their time from what they were receiving prior. So they went from 15 minutes to where they're getting an additional 15, so a full 30 with our LSTs. We've got some other students that are being referred for some of the IEPs that Julie had talked about. We've got a wonderful EL teacher, Gabby, who is also working with our students there to meet their needs. So, but to be able to have over half already with that number, definitely action being taken. I mentioned yesterday at our meeting with the TRTG, just every collaborative meeting that I sit in on, with the amount of data that we're talking about and how that data is shaping what we're doing for target time, 1st grade through 5th, has been wonderful to see. Lots of CBM type assessments that are being done routinely. Some of our grade levels have actually added those into their SLOs. We've got 100-day plans that we're monitoring, which was something new to our district again this year that we keep coming back to. A matter of fact, it's an item agenda for our Guiding Coalition meeting that meets tomorrow and the rest of this month too. Our SIT, which is our school-wide intervention team, meets weekly on Tuesdays. We got a nice committee that sits around the table. Teachers come, so I mean they're the best source of input. We're really getting better at using EduClimber, which streamlines everything to be able to see where our kids are at, what they need, what interventions have been tried, how long we've been doing those interventions, what kind of progress or no progress is being made there as well. And then, like I said, really the magic happens in our collaborative teams. Our LSTs, every meeting I'm at, I feel like our LSTs are sitting in those as well, along with our student-centered coach. I feel like it's data all the time.
Have you been able to utilize your student-centered coach to kind of target some of these areas?
Yep, and really one of I know when Jenny and I just met with her for one of our check-ins or whatever at that time, one of the really cool ones that she did had to do with 1st grade, but it was 1st grade with those students that are that college pathway or on that higher end level, putting together reading groups. Did that with one of our 1st grade teachers, came up with another assessment. I want to say it was like 95% of those kids scored very, very well in that assessment. That success gets shared at that collaborative team meeting, and she was instantly snapped up by another teacher to be able to run that cycle as well, over the full coaching cycle. I want to say that at the last time that I talked with our student-centered coach, she is actually where she had to turn some people down because her plate's already full. If you're going to do the coaching cycles to fidelity, she actually needed to turn some people away. So the demand for her is super high, which is really good, which is what you want. As we talked about, our student-centered coaches work with teachers. They're not interventionists, but they're working with teachers. So I don't have enough good things to say about Chrissy. She's fantastic. She's been doing a great job, and she's been all over I think she's touched every single grade level. Early on, she worked a lot with Cora Blackburn, specifically for math, which is a program and a book. Jenny just organized the PD day that we went to as well, just to continue that learning, and that called Building Thinking Classrooms, which just is a whole entirely different way of challenging our kids, especially some of our higher students, higher achieving students. Chrissy and Cora visited, I believe, every grade level as well, modeled lessons for them, and in some cases it stuck, and in other cases maybe not, it didn't stick as regularly. We also have brand new curriculum this year, which you guys are aware of too. So it's always a balancing act as far as you don't want people to be overwhelmed. And if we're going to do something, we want to do it well. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for Curtis on the ADR reporting? Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex, superintendent update.
I just had, in my email updates you guys this last week, I had given you some, just look ahead dates, and just want to make sure that you pay attention to those. We also sent out the information that at this time the daycare is not feasible in the district, so I just want to, let you know that we've had a little feedback on that, and so we're having some conversations with staff again around with daycare not being in the district, how does that look, and how is that message landing? So we've had a few say that they were really hoping that daycare would be here, but with the cost in excess of what it is, and having to satisfy the requirements of what we need to do, it just isn't feasible at this time. But I do think that it is something that we need to look at in the future as we're planning for it. It isn't something that we originally put into a 10-year plan, but I think that it is something that we would want to have a conversation around, knowing that it definitely was an interest of staff, and it's a pretty creative idea that staff had brought to us about having an in-house daycare. I also just gave some safety updates around Raptor and visitor protocols within the update as well. Raptor is the ID system I described, and I hope you guys had a little bit of a chance to take a look at that. And if you've been in other school districts during the day where you've had to attend a meeting or something, you've probably been through that process. I know, Jen, when you went out and about with us, we went through the Raptor process. And it is really slick. It's very nice. We're starting some work already at the high school over the spring break of redoing the office area. Some things will be done there. And we just, we continue to work on those, on any of our visitor protocols. We've been talking with our secretaries, and we believe that the training will go quick and things will be put in place. And our families should be comfortable with it when they come in. It isn't too painful as long as we have an ID, or we will have a way at least to screen all of our people that come through the buildings. I don't know if you have any questions for me about Raptor. We haven't gone through the training yet, but I know that was a question that we had, like how quickly are we going to be moving on some of these things, and that I believe Raptor should be in before the end of the year, and we'll be doing some work at the high school over spring break, so that should be done. Nick, if you give Nick a job, he'll get it done very quickly. Then the other thing in the update that I had was just about our survey that would be coming, and I know that there were some questions around that. Dennis, I think you asked a question about wanting to see the questions, and we can get those out to the board. Get that done. I don't know when it'll be sometime this next week that we'll just send that PDF out that comes from school perception, so you can take a look at those. And that's all I have for you.
Okay. Our next business meeting is March 20th here in the district office meeting room. Currently on the agenda is the 22-23 budget revisions.
No, that won't be on there. I think 22, 23 is long gone.
I think so. Are there going to be any? There's no budget update at the next one. So we'll take that off. There will be handbook revisions, K through 5 science resource adoption transition to new kits, 6 through 8 English language arts adoption, and the annual Pulaski News updates. We are going to move into a closed session tonight to specifically discuss superintendent evaluation for Wisconsin statute 1985-1C. Is there a motion to move into closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to move into closed session. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Good night, everyone. See you in a couple of weeks.